Hey everyone, welcome to another great podcast. I'm Melanie Johnson. I'm here with my co-host Jenn Foster. Hey Jenn.
Hey everyone, how's it going today?
Well, I'm having a great day so far. It's been fantastic. Every day's a great day, right? There's always wonderful blessings that happen in every single day. Magical. It's like, Forrest Gump said, it's that box of chocolates. You just never know what you're going to get. So, but some of us don't feel that way. Some of us get crushed when something happens and we fail at something. And either you can be excited about it or you can just hide under the covers and then life just starts passing you by. And, it can happen to all of us. I mean, but how do you bounce back? So we're going to go into this in depth today. Dawn Nelson, who is just an amazing life coach. She's been doing this for a lot of years. She's such an expert. And we had this conversation that this is such a big thing of failure. So if you want to know how to succeed failure, then you've come to the right place today. So Dawn, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us, Dawn, a little bit about yourself and how you got into life coaching.
I'll tell you how I got into life coaching. I'm a former psychotherapist. I was in private practice for 25 years and years ago. As part of our continuing education, I went to a coaching seminar. And I was fascinated by the whole technique and the modality. So I began weaving it in, learned more, obviously got certified, started weaving it into my private practice because it was so effective.
Mhm.
And I knew that one day I was going to want to do just that. So I thought I would do it in 2020, but the world had other plans. So that did not happen. So a couple of years ago, I decided that it was time, and it was time to do coaching full time. So I retired my psychotherapy license, and the next day I started my coaching practice and have not looked back. It has been everything I thought it would be. Lots of fun, very inspiring. It's a wonderful experience to help people.
And what do you find is like some of the main hurdles of, I mean, we talked a little bit about failure. What do you see that is trending in life coaching that people are trying to get over the most, whether it's failure or something else? Just kind of warm us up here.
This misconception that we're supposed to just be magically successful, like from A to Z, and no one's including the middle ground, like what does it look like? I
Mhm.
always talk about climbing to the top of the mountain, but you go through some valleys and some hills, and you go around the mountain a couple times, and sometimes you fall off into the weeds and you roll down the hill. I mean, people have a misconception a lot of times that they're going to do 1, 2, 3 and be at the end of the road or the top of the mountain and whoa, I got it. It's like, it's a little more in depth than that. And if that happens, great. But a lot of people get discouraged when they, fall off the path. And in today's world, we all fall off the path. We have so many distractions.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important to remember that it's not just a clean line to success, that you
Oh.
actually have to have pitfalls and valleys and, you go up and down like a roller coaster. It's not just one line.
So, what I see happen a lot in our culture concerns me because in today's world, especially with social media, and I'm not dogging social media because it has so many positive uses. However, what people put on social media are their top of the mountain stories, right?
Mhm.
They put themselves at the top of the mountain and look at these great things that are happening and how wonderful my life is. And that's awesome. Everybody loves to see that. What they don't understand, a lot of times, people who are looking at that, is this didn't just magically appear. So they're not seeing what people struggled with or when they rolled down the hill and got a little beaten up, that kind of thing. And I just really want people to know that failure is not a bad thing. It has a kind of a bad reputation or connotation to it. And the bottom line is failure is part of life. Failure is part of success. This is how you get there.
And I think if you normalize that, this is almost like a call to action. So Dawn was like, I want a call to action. You had told me like that people don't just post their successes, start posting your challenges. Start
Mhm.
telling people, my day sucked today. You know what happened? Everything went wrong today. But you know what? That, it's not going to stay that way. Tomorrow's another day, but letting us know that you're normal. You're not all roses and butterflies. But I think not just letting people like having that challenge, but tell us like, how do we not get stuck in the failure mode? How do we not get stuck that I'm a loser? It's never gonna get better. I screwed up. And how do you get to the other side of that? What are some of your strategies to do that?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't get in your head. Don't get in your head and roll it around, and don't isolate. You
Yeah.
know, reach out, talk to someone, talk to a trusted friend, run it by someone. There are days when we all just need to vent. We don't even want a solution. We know we'll come up with a solution, but we just need to talk to someone. So I think the worst thing that we can do is to start imagining that we're the only person who's having this happen, because it's simply not true. So we get wrapped up in a fallacy, and that's just that is really taking people off base and away from what they want to do. It keeps them from moving forward, it gets them stuck, they start to get discouraged, those kind of things. It's like, no, get back on the path, you know, reach out to someone.
Yeah, I like that you talked about venting, because I think a lot of times when we want to rant or vent, it's important for the people who are listening to us to know that we don't want solutions. We just want to be able to tell you we just want to say it out loud to like put it and just get rid of it, right? Like,
Absolutely. It's almost, I was talking to someone yesterday and I was thinking, it's almost like confession. You just want to share with someone what's going on, and you don't expect them to correct whatever it is that you're struggling with, or, what really got you off the path today. It's just about having a safe place to land and have somebody hear you. That's it for most people. If it's beyond that, there's always psychotherapy, there's always other forms of help. But for most people, if they simply avoid getting in their heads, reach out to a friend, feel heard, they can put it right back together again.
Yeah, there is that school of thought, like that talking out loud, hearing yourself talk. And sometimes when you hear yourself talk, you come up with a solution yourself, even when you're doing that.
It's
Um,
amazing.
and even though sometimes like I'll vent, but I do like to hear someone's opinion sometimes. Not everybody's wired that way. Like, cause then maybe you get a different perspective of it, of what to do. So, and I think sometimes people get closed off, like, well, don't tell me what to do, or they get offended by it. But if you put it out there, people's brains are going to work and they're going to maybe give you suggestions. And I always say the best part about advice is you don't have to take it.
Let me say two things about that. One is that Jenn made a point of just having a safe place to vent is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just the statement, she said, put it out there and let them know that you're not looking for them to solve your problem. You just want a safe place to talk. You just want to vent for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving that disclaimer up front, which is really important. So the other person knows, what role do you want me to play here?
Yeah.
And then what you said about sometimes, there's something, Melanie, you said just about hearing yourself talk and
Mm-hmm.
then you come up with your own solution. I can tell you that for, over 25 years now, I've been working with people. And when I ask them, what do you want to do about that? Almost always the immediate response is, I don't know. And then within 30 seconds to maybe a minute, they'll say, blah, 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 because they know exactly what it is. So, in my line of work, we always talk about staying in the question. And I always tell my clients, I have the questions, you have the answers. So although I have skill and expertise and certainly education to share with them, they really have the answer. So it's about me asking the question that elicits their responses.
Yeah. And then what about, fear and failure kind of go together, right? So if you fail, then you have fear. I mean, I'll use a small example from my own life. It's like, I did some real estate investment with this group. They ripped me off. And then I had this fear that I'm going to get ripped off again. I don't know. Maybe I should just not jump into that again. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Or maybe you competed at something and didn't do well. And then, how do you, because really explain how fear and failure are connected, in how to work through fear?
Well, first of all, I think that when someone fails at something, like to use your example of the real estate investment, there are many moving parts. So it's about learning a brand new area. And we have to give ourselves some credit for risking to go and put ourselves in a new arena, right? It's all about learning. So we could stop there and get scared and say, well, it happened once, so it could happen again. Well, it could happen a million times. But my question is, what would make it better? Like looking back on it now and having the benefit of 2020 vision, what do you think? What could you do differently that would make it better? Who would you go to? Who would you run it by? What things might you do differently? What things would you look at maybe deeper? And sometimes the truth of it is there's nothing you could have done, especially if you are interacting with someone who isn't based in truth. So
Yeah.
that's a very unfortunate set of circumstances.
And I think that is so true, is the kind of test and measure, right? So if you fail, how can I do better next time? Who can I align myself with? What can I make the situation different? So you don't have to do this exact same thing over again, right? The about failure is fail forward fast, right? Learn from it and then do it again, and then learn some more and then do it again.
Right. It definitely is a part of, it's an opportunity to learn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really, I think, is unfortunate that people a lot of times will let failure keep them from moving forward. Like, well, I failed at that, so I must not be any good at it. And all the other things that they make up that are, again, are not founded in truth.
Mm-hmm.
Or, seen through a dark lens.
I think that's important because I think we do tell ourselves a lot of things where if you really step back and look at what those things you're saying, they're not true.
They're not true, and they can be immobilizing. They can keep people from taking healthy risks. They can keep people from being involved. They can keep people shut down. It's not a good thing. It's like a mentor of mine always says, you can look at the facts, just don't stare at them.
Right.
I love that.
In other words, don't overwhelm ourselves with them. Look at the facts, but don't freak ourselves out, because we're all capable of it.
How would you say identifying your goals and having clarity on your goals assist with the failure and fear thing? How do those maybe tie in, and some of your tips and how to really clarify your goals?
Well, they definitely tie in. And one of the things I always ask people to do when they work with me on goals, well, first of all, they're going to be very specific. They're going to be observable, measurable. We're going to know if they did it or they did not do it. We're going to get feedback along the way and find out what's working, what's not working, and adjust things as we go. As they start out, though, I always ask them to go with their goals and sit down with 3 people that they trust, 3 individual people that they trust, run their goals by them and ask them to give them feedback. So people that know them, care about them, have history with them, and people that they trust. So in other words, they're getting a consensus of people whose opinions they hold in high regard. And that's not necessarily a stop sign, even if they don't agree.
Like, yeah, you can take someone's advice that you can either take it or leave it. They don't know everything that you know, but it gives you some other perspectives of people who know your background, know your personality, and get some of their perspective on it, and take it into consideration, process it, and say, is there truth to that? Is there not truth to that? And if there is truth, how do I work around that, maybe to still achieve my goal?
Right.
Or maybe change the goal slightly when you're doing that.
A lot of times when people are first getting started with goal setting, one of the things that can throw them is when they go to the 3 people, and usually this will happen. These are people that have been successful because they've had a lot of failure. And they'll ask questions, like really pointed questions, like, well, what are you going to do if this transpires? And how are you going to adjust for this? And they'll just go, well, I don't know. I'm not that far along yet. And sometimes they get a little thwarted by that. It's like, no, these are great questions. These are things to consider.
And then how do you develop like an action plan from there? And like you're saying, the obstacles. So you got actions and you say, well, the friends can give you obstacles, but then address obstacles as well.
I love that question because, again, this is another thing that's rarely talked about, obstacles. And again, every goal has some obstacles, right? So I work with people to identify the obstacles that come to mind.
Mhm.
It's like I don't expect that they're going to bring every obstacle to mind. However, if they sit with it for a few minutes and give it some thought, they're going to just readily come up with some things. So they can make plans, loose plans, like, oh, well, what I would do if that came up is I would do this. So we have
Mhm.
some idea of, if those kind of things came up, we would do this. And I always talk with people about being resourceful, using their resources, picking up the phone and calling someone who they know knows about this particular thing, running it by someone just to have the benefit of another perspective. So planning is we start at the end and come backwards. So we
Mhm.
start with the very first step. So like if we're going from A to Z, we don't go from A to Z and have a complete plan of all these steps. We have 3 steps, 5 steps, because it's like, I always use an analogy is it's like downhill skiing. Years ago, I went with a friend who learned how to ski on the mountain, and we did bunny slopes in the morning and practice. And then we went to lunch and I said, now this afternoon, when we get up on the mountain, and she said, I'm not getting on the mountain. And I said, what are you talking about? We're here to go skiing. We're going to be here for 4 or 5 days. And she said, oh, I'm not going back up there. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, I looked down the mountain and that was frightening. And I was like, don't look down the mountain. Just look 10 feet in front of you. That's it. It's like once you get all this, then you look down the mountain. Once you have some feel for everything and you know how to snowplow and you can, go down the hill, then you look down the mountain. But please don't look down the mountain first thing. Like we're just going to go a couple steps in front. We're just going to keep moving forward. And
Mm.
what happens is when the subconscious mind has a goal that's clear, distinct, and someone has a sense of, they can imagine, sense, and feel what it's going to be like to reach the goal, then their subconscious mind backs up and says, what do we do today? What do we do tomorrow? What do we do this week? So I have them block it out in time frames, usually time frames of a week to 2 weeks.
Oh.
I like the little step-by-step process because, like you said, you can't just look at the end and think you're going to get there in one step, right?
Right.
So you can't look
Right.
down the mountain and be like, I'm not doing it because that looks too far down, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that step-by-step and just move a little bit forward. I like that.
You really helped me with an analogy because I think all of us, if we just looked at the end result, it'd be like, oh, well, how am I going to do that? And yet we know, a lot of times people will say, I've never done this before. Well, you haven't done this specific thing before, but you've reached many goals in your lifetime. And they'll say, oh, I don't think I have, and then I'll start going, well, did you do this? Yeah. Well, did you do this? Yeah. Did you graduate from college? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, you had to do some things and you had to put some things in place to make that happen over a series of years. You did that. You can do this.
And sometimes we forget where we've been, that we're capable to take us where we need to go. And another analogy I had with the ski slope is that the stairway, like if you're at the Eiffel Tower and you're looking up at all the stairs, or the Empire State Building, you're like, climbing all that, that's ridiculous. But if you just put your head down, one step after another, one step after another, all of a sudden you take a look back and you're like, oh my gosh, there's 100 steps behind me. And you're
Right.
like, I can't believe I got this far. I think so many times a lot of us get in our own way. How do we get out of our own way?
Well, usually when someone's in their own way, one of the things that I'm going to pick up on is a level of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it also, when I ask some questions, it also means that they have kind of been, I don't know another word to use, but isolating. In other words, they haven't been expressing much. They haven't been sharing with other people. And I really believe that we were meant to be in relationship with each other and all different types of relationships. So, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, life is not meant to be lived alone. And it's true. I mean, we're in some sort of community all the time, and we need to use each other as sounding boards.
Yeah.
It's not that we want advice. Sometimes we just want to be heard, or like you said, saying it out loud resonates with us and something pops up in our conscious awareness and we go, oh, yeah, of course. Why didn't I think of that?
And, I think it's so important to have that person without skin in the game that you can talk to. I used to go to my mom and dad all the time, but then at one point in my life, I'm like, I need someone who doesn't have skin in the game, that's not so entrenched in all this, that can be like overview. So I think that's why having some sort of life coach or coaching person in your life is so important. Well, I want to tell you, thanks for being on. We had so much great content here, Dawn, and tell people where they can find you.
Well, they can find me on Instagram, my coach, Dawn Nelson, or they can also find me on the web. It's mycoachdawnnelson.com.
And if you're looking for a life coach, I just want to say you can be anywhere in the country and Dawn can coach you. So reach out to her. She's incredible. I know people that she's coached with and they have nothing but rave things to say about her. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be with the two of you today.
Yep. So check out, we'll put all those links in the show notes so you'll have all those. And remember to tune in to us next time and subscribe to our podcast. And if you're looking to do a book, remember, check out eliteonlinepublishing.com. We make all of our authors bestsellers. If you have a book that's inspirational, motivational, or educational, that's who we're looking for. And we'll see you next time. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.